Jesse Armstrong has previously satirised political power in shows like The Thick of It and in The Loop, media power in Succession. Well, now he's turning his attention to tech power with a new film, Mountainhead. And Jesse Armstrong joins me now. Hi, Jesse.
Hey, how you doing, Matt?
Yeah, very good. So explain why you've now turned your attention to what most people would recognise as the tech bros.
After Succession, I didn't intend to do any more work about rich people, but I wrote a book review. I started reading about tech world a little bit, and then I started listening to podcasts. And novelists sometimes talk about trying to find a voice for their novel, and the voice of tech world wouldn't really leave my head until I thought I'd try and exorcise it by putting it on film.
And is that because, I don't know when you started writing it, but in the last few years, it's hard to avoid the voice of tech in life, and particularly Elon Musk?
Musk's obviously been really present. I've done this really quickly. I didn't start writing it until January. So it's not about Elon Musk. We have a sort of richest guy in the world character, but I think people would find him, find some flavors of Mark Zuckerberg and Sam Altman and other less well-known tech people in there as well. So it's not sort of a Musk hit job. It's trying to be a portrait of a group of people who are so powerful and maybe a particular way of talking and a particular way of thinking.
And is your interest, you talked about rich people, which is clearly a lot of the focus of Succession, but is it actually more about power? And does their power come from their platforms more than their wealth, or the two things connected?
Yeah, thank you, Matt, because a lot of people have been saying, why are you writing about these bloody rich people again? And I do, maybe I've been seduced and I just like hanging around in oatmeal rooms that look like hotels, which is where most of the rich people, they seem to live. We did a lot of research and a lot of scouting of locations, and it's surprising how similar the spaces are. But yeah, I don't think I'm interested in the money as much as I am in the power. I didn't just want to write a rich people show in Succession. It was about newspaper and news media, TV news power, and this is about tech power. Yeah, about social media power, about AI power.
I know you're meticulous in your research. Are there scenes? Because I have to say, the film is very funny. And a reminder that these people might have lots of money, but they can still be very strange. Are there particular scenes or stories that you came across which have found their way into the film? That is this really what they're like?
No, probably not. This is my version of what they're like. But is it does it give you a true sense? It gives you a true sense of what I think they're like. And people who listen to the podcasts of these powerful people talking to each other in that kind of, in the milieu where they're talking to friends and peers, I think they'll recognize the voice. It's a comedy, so maybe it's heightened, but sometimes you find stories that you have to tone down because if you put a real version of them on TV, they would stretch the boundaries of believability. But yeah, I research. Another word for that is steal. I go out and read a lot and take facets of real people and their stories, and then have the liberty of fiction to refashion them into good shapes that make, hopefully in this case, a movie.
So go on, share. You don't have to tell us who it is, but share us your favourite story, which tells us something about why these tech bros might not be like the rest of us.
I'm a scaredy cat. I don't really like meeting people, like a lot of writers. I prefer secondary sources, and especially American long-form journalism and biographies, and also podcasts I mentioned. You get a great deal of good detail. What's the best? Doge is so present in people's minds, and it's not really reflected in the film. The billionaires in my film have a bit of a more distant relationship to government, but I guess the Doge stories are quite salutary, aren't they?
Elon Musk wielding his chainsaw.
Yeah, I guess the things that stick with me, they're not particularly funny, but I guess I think about those rapid shifts of power that you can't believe till they happen. People might know that Elon Musk was pushed out of PayPal by Peter Thiel, a big tech figure, and Sam Altman also, at OpenAI, he was pushed out by his own board over the course of this incredibly dramatic weekend. And these titanic struggles that happen, that where people's careers and the shape of their lives hang in the balance, they're always the ones which seem to me close to fiction, and they're not particularly funny, but I find those tipping moments are very useful to think about for fiction, for other possible realities.
And what does it say about our politics then? That so much power now lies with these sort of transnational, borderless, accountability-free billionaires?
One thing I feel is a certain amount of pity. I feel pity for the politicians trying to get their arms around tech power, which is mostly in the US, and the ways in which you can get purchase on it are not always clear. And at my most generous, I feel a certain amount of pity for the tech people, because, occasionally, especially, things have moved on, but 6 months, 12 months, a year ago, people in AI were pretty much pleading to be restricted, to have guardrails put around their work, because there's a phrase used in the movie, which is P-doom, your probability of doom, the chances you think there are in the world of your work destroying the world. And the people in AI, maybe they're being self-aggrandizing, but they talk in terms of like a tenth, a fifth, a quarter, a half a chance of their work destroying humanity. And I've got a certain amount of human pity for their predicament being at the forefront of that work. Are they as careful as they could be? Not necessarily, but a lot of them went into it hoping to be. Sam Altman and even Elon himself.
Did you come away from this world thinking we're all doomed? That we are all going to be killed by robots, brought down by this tech?
No, I think most people think we'll be turned into paper clips rather than be killed by the robot dogs. I don't know which way you'd prefer to go. Probably go robot dog, but no, I don't. I mean, the one thing about the field is that it's so changing that anything you say today will be wrong tomorrow, and this may turn out to be a dooming moment of initial contact with this very transformative technology. So I try and live in a bubble of complete unknowing of what's coming, and that's more comforting than having a very, very high P-doom.
The stakes seem so much higher, though. The worst thing that happened in the thick of it was Malcolm Tucker might not be entirely truthful to The Independent. And now you're talking about, deadly riots bringing down governments and whole nations around the world. Do you feel like the world has got worse?
Do I feel like the world has got worse? Well, kind of not yet, And the thick of it was about that Labour government, but in the loop was about reflected a real war that happened where tens of thousands of real people died. So things have gone very wrong before. The sort of the backdrop of crisis that is posited in this film is one of the least hasn't happened yet.
If the world hasn't got worse, then I wonder about politics. I distinctly remember after, in fact, it was almost exactly 10 years ago, after Ed Miliband unveiled his headstone. I think you wrote on Twitter, "This is why we had to stop right in the thick of it, because you've got a real life politician putting up a headstone." And there's been lots of conversations still going on about comms in the Labour government right now. Do you think our politics has got worse?
I worked in the Labour Party for a little while, and I remember people saying before Tony Blair got elected, like, who are these pygmies in the Blair, shadow cabinet, compared to the behemoths of the Thatcher era, the Tory big beasts. And so I think you always have to be careful about the people who you grew up with feel like these intellects and big figures, and the current generation always feel like pygmies. And then guess what? David Blunkett and Jack Straw are elder statesmen, and the current crop somehow don't seem to match up. So I think that can be a trick of the light.
Looking back on your career, it strikes me that there's part of you that's always looking for, or at least hoping, that there are some grown-ups in charge. Whether go right back to Peep Show, and you've got Mark and Jeremy, sort of they're young men becoming adults, sort of hoping at some point the adults are going to tell them what to do. In the thick of it, you sort of hope there's some grown-ups in charge in politics. In Succession, you sort of hope there's some grown-ups in charge of media organizations. It's just squabbling children. And then with this again, you hope that there are some grown-ups in charge of tech. And yet the film demonstrates these are just four slightly nerdy, socially dysfunctional blokes. Is that something we've all got to come to terms with, and actually maybe reflect on our own position? That if we think that, whether it's tech or politics or whatever, there are no they're just human. All these people, they might have money, they might have power, but they're all just human beings.
You may have just sort of ended my career by succinctly summing up my worldview in a way.
I hoped I was hailing it rather than ending it.
You've killed it. You've done it. That's it. I think it certainly hits home in terms of like one's hopes about the world and fears. As I grew into the world and met people, I never really managed to tear a curtain aside where there wasn't a sort of odd thing behind. Not to say there aren't some very bright and brilliant people trying to do good things in the world, but yeah, it's salutary as you grow up and realize who is in control of things.
Is there something about responsibility as well that I suppose, at least in politics, in theory, in the world of Malcolm Tucker, whatever, there's an election and you can be voted out, and politicians of all stripes and all parts of Western democracy fall foul of that. In a way that hasn't been the case for your Murdochs or Rothermere's, whatever, in newspapers and media, and clearly isn't the case in tech.
Yeah, I think you're dead right. What have we got to fight against tech power? We have the rules and regulations that we set in democracies, and they feel relatively feeble, and they feel also amenable to interactions with that tech power. I think that's all we've got, and that's why maybe when JD Vance gave two pretty scary speeches towards the beginning of the administration in Munich about security and one about AI, and the sense that the government in the country with the leading tech firms was going to, it seemed to some degree, leave the field of regulation was I think a pretty salutary moment.
Are you worried about being replaced by AI, that someone could feed all of Jesse Armstrong's work into a machine and you get replaced? How concerned are you about the threat that AI poses to your career, your industry?
Probably foolishly unconcerned at the moment. We've got a good union in the US, good writers union, and there's some protections. I think labelling is the most important thing. Probably an AI will be able to write what I write eventually. I still think that people will be interested to hear what another human being thinks, as long as they know what is being created by AI and what isn't. My hunch is that people are interested in other human beings, not simulacrums of them, but I may be wrong.
Cheers, Jesse.
Cheers. Bye-bye.